The next item on the list was bearing blocks, and these bearing blocks were to be made out of wood in the original plans. And you were to drill 2 holes through the sides, as you can see here, which accommodated a rod that went from the hub to the bearing plate on the outside. And inside each one of these holes, you were supposed to put a brass bushing in the front and a brass bushing in the back of each hole to accommodate the rods that it rode on. The other thing you were supposed to do is drill a hole from the top center all the way through the bottom, which accommodated the lift mechanism for the pies and the leaves to raise them into place. There is so much friction in all of those things. I was nervous not doing it without linear bearings and actual metal, and I decided to take a different route. I started by making 12 plates out of 1/4 inch aluminum, which I was hoping to be able to attach to linear bearings that would ride on the rod. So we got all 12 of them cut out and into place, and then I cut 12 cylinders out of 1/4 inch aluminum tube that were going to go through the center of the plates that I just cut. But before I could do that, I had to put the aluminum on the lathe and cut the center out so that it would fit the shafts with the bearings that slid in and out of them. And that took time, but it turned out nicely, and the sleeves turned out fairly nicely. Then it was time to take the plates, which you see there, and put the cylinders through the plates and braise the cylinders into place. Now I'm doing all this with all this metal and on a metal table to make sure that the cylinders were square top to bottom. So these blocks that you see are from the lathe. They are certified square. I put a piece of aluminum underneath each one to get the sleeve at the exact height that I needed on the bottom side, and make sure that the sleeve was square to the plate. And once I did that and made sure everything was fine, I put the sleeve in the hole and started to braise the sleeve into place. As you can see here, I put weight on the top of the sleeve to make sure that it stayed square, flat on the table, even during the heating process. Now, I have never braised before, and so the process was new to me. You got to get this both sides really, really, really hot. I think they've said like 700 degrees or something. You got to keep playing with it until they're both hot, and then you just go around and braise it into place. And that took some trial and error, but I finally got it to the point that it worked out. They weren't very pretty, but I'm happy to say that they held in place, and everything turned out square. Once they were all brazed in place, I took it all apart, and I did that to 6 of the 12 units that we had cut. It's hot, I'm telling you. It was now time to put the lifting shafts together. As you can see here, they consisted of a nut, a bearing, the shaft that we had put in the lathe and threaded, the attachment plate, and a bolt to hold it into place. And it turned out okay. So the first bearing mechanism that we cut, obviously you see the plate there that we cut with the countersunk holes, the 2 linear bearings, the 12 screws, and 4 spacers, and 4 nuts that I had to put on the lathe to make them round, and I'll show you where they fit later. So here it is from the top version put together. That's I think it's a 35 millimeter linear bearing. It comes through the hole with 30 millimeter linear bearings there on the bottom. This reminds me of when you're watching movies, the bad robot sign. It's pretty funny. But so you see here the linear bearings that the rod's attached to, the main linear bearing in the middle with 4 spacers between the bottom and the top. I did those spacers because I needed to get the linear bearing at an exact height. And the next picture will show the bottom of the linear bearings, and you'll see the bolts that are coming through the main linear bearing, and those round nuts. I did the round nuts so that they fit inside the linear bearing so that I had enough clearance on the bottom, and they turned out okay. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to get them tight, but once I tightened on the top, once they got a little snug, then I could tighten them as tight as I wanted and they wouldn't turn, which was lucky. So once I had both sets of bearing blocks in place, the one with the linear bearings and the ones with the simple pass-through tube. The pass-through tube was made for the one on the right is a one for a pie, and it's stationary. Once that triangle is screwed into the piece of wood, it's stationary front to back, and all it does is it moves in and out, not up or down. The one on the left, however, is the one for the leaf, that the leaf has to pop up a full 3/4 of an inch to meet the star in the center and the pie on the side, and therefore the linear bearing. So there's the 2 of them side by side. Once that was done, it was time to get them all attached to the hub and all of the linear bearings. As you see here, they're all in. And here's a close-up shot to how the linear bearings work. And then once that's in place, here's a shot, and this is always fun for me. This is kind of mesmerizing. But here's a shot of them all opening and closing. You go Thanks for watching. See you next time.